ToonGrin.com.
Hey, if it got to become an expansion pack for Angry Birds, you just gotta know it's top quality. This is Whyboy Spotlight's Rio. Blue Sky Studios, a production company that has made some of the most beautiful and recognized animated films, like Ice Age, Epic, and Horn Hears a Who. However, in terms of their actual entertainment quality, they've ranged from great to garbage material. There has been a lot of animated movies through the years that have came and went without any sort of noise made about them. It happened with the Babe Ruth talking bat movie Everyone's Hero, it happened with Disney's Meet the Robinsons, and now we have Blue Sky's latest movie series attempt, Rio. Ignoring the fact that Rio has hoarded stuff out so many times, if the characters were real, that you'd probably see them begging for pennies next to the 7-Eleven, I never heard much about Rio, good or bad. Sure, there were whispers about the animation looking fantastic, but other than that, Rio just faded from public consciousness until Blue Sky attached jumper cables to it and revived this dead horse and made Rio 2. But does it really have the capacity to become a sequel spewing monster like Ice Age or Alpha and Omega? Well, if the masses want it, sure, but let's figure out my personal opinion. Our story stars a domesticated blue macaw named Blue, who lives a very happy modern life with his bookworm owner Linda in Minnesota. But then quirky levels go up a notch, as bird specialist and scientist Tullio Montieri comes across Blue and tells Linda that he is among the last of his species, proposing that he can take the two of them all the way to Rio to hook Blue up with this female blue macaw they found. Linda reluctantly agrees, and Blue meets the bland love interest Jewel. But tragedy strikes, as thanks to this cockatoo named Nigel, and he turns out to be evil, and gets Blue and Jewel stolen by 3 forgettable smugglers, and a street orphan with a heart of gold. Through a very well animated chasing, Blue and Jewel are strapped together via a chain, and must make their way across Rio to find a way to free themselves. So will these two birds of a feather stay together? I'll just lay it flat out that there are only 3 things that I thought were really well done in this movie. Everything else was middle of the road. Nothing terrible except for a black-eyed pea and a fox sneak up the humor in this movie, making it hip. But we'll get to that soon. Let's really start with the story and how these characters relate to the thematic message. Blue is a neurotic, flightless, and overly cautious dork, and Jewel is supposed to be its exact opposite, but I never got any sort of character from Jewel. If we had a real diametric relationship, then Jewel should be completely wild, rash, and somewhat self-absorbed, as Blue would be the introvert, always cautious about acting wild, and Jewel would be able to show him how to be wild and free. That's what I would suggest if I were this movie's story editor. What we got is a personality version of the I'm rubber, you're glue variety. Everything Blue says, Jewel is against it or can't comprehend how you can think that way. It gets really tedious and really repetitive, and I was just counting down the seconds until we would get the inevitable tragic backstory where Jewel would pour her heart out, showing that deep within that heart of ice is just a tiny flower that just needs love to be nurtured. That would be predictable, but it'd be character development. Too bad the movie forgot about that, mostly focusing on Blue's end of the relationship, leaving Jewel a shallow emotional tool for the story, complete with traditional kidnapping by the villain. Blue is an actual character with emotions, who takes action and inaction, and could be a really good romantic foil. It's just too bad he was partnered with the blandest partner possible. Speaking of partners, it's time to introduce you to Rio's lineup of comic release. The hippest birds on the block, Will.i.am and Jamie Foxx, the contractually obligated George Lopez toucan, and a slobbering pitbull version of Tracy Morgan. 4 wonderfully varied comic reliefs, and only 2 bring actual relief, while the other 2 might have brought that if they were put in the fire during the movie. Tracy Morgan's character was just this slobbering gimmick. His drool gets everywhere, people slip on it, and you can almost sense the writer wanting to put in a laugh track to this. He's really just here to act as the goal for our bluebirds, which isn't bad per se. He fulfills his role, and for that, he gets a passing C grade. will.i.am and Jamie Foxx, on the other hand, are the hip characters. The ones who were thrown into the trailer to show that the movie's cool. Every scene with them is just an eye-rolling hilarity. Oddly enough, George Lopez's character actually serves more of a purpose than just comic relief. He serves as a projection of Blue and Jules' relationship. Our first scene with George has us meeting his chaotic family and his lovely wife. On the surface, this could just be considered filler to have some more zany comedy, but afterwards, George played as Blue's experienced mentor, or a conscience, so to speak. Most of the scenes showed George trying to get Blue to win over Jewel, as well as be more daring. This is more intriguing on a story level, as we have a clear mentor character who pulls double duty as comic relief. No black eyed peas necessary for this, but we can gloss over all the human characters with a big fat meh. I'm getting right to one of the best parts of Rio. Jermaine Clements as Nigel. In a much better comedy, he would have been one of the greats. He just owns the role of this psychotic cockatoo, bringing on one side of an air of dignity and Shakespearean wit, but then cackling insanely like a hyena. He's also a perfect foil to Blue, as the always self-conscious Blue goes up against the completely self-absorbed Nigel. Plus his villain song was pretty decent, with cool visuals, funny lyrics, and Jermaine Clements' voice was able to be both creepily soothing and darkly over-exaggerated. Nigel alone made this movie not a waste of time to watch for me. But now onto the other major scene that this movie has right. Wait for it, it's a real shocker now. The visuals. Blue Sky pulls out all this stuff by bringing us some of the most colorful and expressive animation in a long time. The motion and lighting, especially in the musical sections, are among some of the most vibrant and exciting I've ever seen. The animation made songs that honestly aren't too memorable and made them visually memorable. Although, saying that, good visuals do not make up for a really just average middle-of-the-road story and characters. I can't say this is a bad movie by a long shot, but it has the stench of the executive design, so that the film could appeal to the most broadest market, which includes will.i.am and the underdeveloped romance subplot. I think Rio is good for a watch if you're interested in becoming an animator, so you can see a great example of color and movement. And for a normal viewing audience, it's completely harmless. And you'll quickly forget watching the movie as soon as the DVD stops.
That's my big brave boy.